The anesthesiologist's voice was the last thing I heard before the world went dark. "Count backwards from 10, Mrs. Harrison." I made it to 7 before the operating room dissolved into nothing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What I didn't know was that while I was unconscious on that table, my husband of 11 years was in the hospital cafeteria, changing our life insurance beneficiary. Not to his mother, not to our non-existent children, but to a woman named Stella Marsh, a nurse he claimed had been so compassionate during my pre-op appointments. Except Stella Marsh wasn't a nurse at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment 3 weeks before my surgery when everything still seemed normal, when I still trusted my husband, when I still believed the woman in scrubs who kept appearing during my hospital visits was just being kind. The headaches had started 6 months earlier. Sharp, blinding pain that would strike without warning, leaving me doubled over and gasping. My primary care physician had ordered an MRI, and the results came back with words that changed everything. Arteriovenous malformation. A tangle of blood vessels in my brain that could rupture at any moment. "You need surgery," Dr. Patterson had said, her face serious but calm. "It's risky, but leaving it untreated is riskier. The AVM is in a delicate location, but our neurosurgeon, Dr. Reeves, is one of the best in the country." I remember calling my husband Marcus from the parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Brain surgery." His voice had cracked. "Oh God, Natalie, when?" "They want to schedule it as soon as possible. Within the month." There had been a long pause. "I'll take care of everything. Don't worry about work. Don't worry about the house. Don't worry about anything. Just focus on getting through this." At the time, I'd thought it was love. The way he'd held me that night, promising we'd get through it together. The way he'd insisted on coming to every pre-op appointment, every consultation, every planning session. I'd even joked with my sister Claire about how attentive he'd become. "Enjoy it while it lasts," she'd laughed. "Once you're recovered, he'll go back to leaving his socks on the floor and forgetting to buy milk." But Marcus's attentiveness had a different motive entirely. The first time I met Stella was during my second pre-op appointment. I was sitting in the neurology waiting room, filling out what felt like the 100th form, when a woman in pale blue scrubs approached with a warm smile. "Mrs. Harrison? I'm Stella. I'll be helping coordinate your care over the next few weeks." She had auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, kind green eyes, and a gentle manner that immediately put me at ease. "I know this must be overwhelming. Brain surgery is scary, but you're in excellent hands." "Thank you," I'd said, grateful for her warmth. "It's all happening so fast." "That's actually good," Stella assured me, settling into the chair beside me. "It means they're taking it seriously. Now let me walk you through what to expect over the next few weeks." She'd been thorough and patient, explaining every step of the process in terms I could understand. When Marcus arrived late from work, apologizing profusely, Stella had smiled and started her explanation over again for his benefit. "Your wife is very brave," she'd told him, touching his arm briefly. "You're lucky to have each other." I'd noticed the way Marcus's eyes had lingered on her a moment too long, but I'd dismissed it. I was about to have brain surgery. I had bigger things to worry about than my husband finding a nurse attractive. Over the next 2 weeks, Stella seemed to be everywhere. She was at my blood work appointment. She was at my cardiology clearance. She was at the anesthesiology consultation. Each time she was warm and professional, asking about my anxiety levels, making sure I understood the post-op recovery process, and generally being the kind of healthcare worker you hope for during a crisis. Marcus seemed particularly grateful for her presence. "She's really something," he'd said after one appointment, as we walked to the parking garage. "So thorough. I feel a lot better knowing someone like her is looking after you." "She's great," I'd agreed, though something in his tone had made me glance at him. But his face was neutral, concerned only for me, or so it seemed. The night before my surgery, Marcus had been uncharacteristically quiet. We'd ordered takeout from my favorite Italian restaurant, possibly my last real meal for a while, given the post-op diet restrictions, and sat on our back patio watching the sunset. "Are you scared?" he'd asked finally, reaching for my hand. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Terrified, I'd admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if I don't wake up? What if I wake up different? "You're going to be fine." He'd squeezed my hand. "And I'll be right there when you wake up." I promise. I'd wanted to believe him. I'd needed to believe him. So when he'd suggested we review our practical matters one last time, I'd nodded, thinking he meant my advance directive and emergency contacts. "I updated our life insurance information last week," he'd said casually, not meeting my eyes. "Just to make sure everything's current. Filed all the paperwork." "Good," I'd murmured, distracted by my own fear. That's smart. What I didn't know was that he'd already changed the beneficiary on his policy to Stella Marsh. What I didn't know was that he planned to change mine. During my surgery, what I didn't know was that the woman I trusted with my medical care wasn't a nurse at all. The morning of the surgery arrived too, quickly and not quickly enough. I'd barely slept, my mind running through every possible complication Dr. Reeves had outlined. Brain hemorrhage, stroke, permanent neurological damage, death. Marcus had been up before dawn, making coffee and toast I was too nauseous to eat. His hands had trembled slightly as he helped me into the car, and I'd attributed it to fear for me. Now I know it was guilt. The pre-op area was a maze of curtained spaces, each containing a patient in a hospital gown, waiting for their turn with fate. A real nurse, her badge clearly displayed, unlike Stella's conspicuous absence of identification, started my IV and went through the checklist. Any jewelry, contacts, dentures? "Just my wedding ring," I'd said, twisting it nervously. "That needs to come off, I'm afraid." "Hospital policy." Marcus had held it for me, slipping it into his pocket. "I'll keep it safe." Dr. Reeves appeared, confident and calm, reviewing the surgical plan one final time. The anesthesiologist introduced himself and explained what I'd experienced. Everything was moving so fast, a choreographed dance I'd been drafted into without learning the steps. "Where's Stella?" Marcus had asked suddenly, looking around. "I thought she'd be here." The real nurse had glanced up from her computer. "Stella who?" "Stella Marsh. She's been coordinating Natalie's care." The nurse's brow furrowed. "I don't know anyone by that name on the neurology team." "What's her role?" "She's a nurse," Marcus had said, and I'd heard something defensive in his tone. "She's been at all the appointments." The nurse had looked puzzled, but let it drop. "Well, you're in excellent hands regardless. Dr. Reeves has a phenomenal success rate." I'd noticed Marcus checking his phone repeatedly, typing something quickly before shoving it back in his pocket. At the time, I'd thought he was updating family members. My parents, his mother. My sister Claire. He was texting Stella. "Okay, Mrs. Harrison," the transport tech had said, unlocking the wheels of my bed. "It's time." Marcus had leaned down, kissing my forehead. "I love you." "I'll be right here when you wake up." "I love you too," I'd whispered, my voice breaking. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I'd caught a glimpse of Marcus already walking in the opposite direction, phone to his ear. Probably calling my parents, I'd thought. Letting everyone know the surgery had started. He was calling his insurance company. The operating room was blindingly bright, filled with people in surgical masks and the steady beep of monitors. Someone helped me transfer from the gurney to the operating table. The anesthesiologist appeared above me, kind eyes crinkling. "Okay, Natalie, you're going to feel a little cold sensation in your IV, and then you're going to get very sleepy. I want you to count backwards from 10 for me. 10, 9, 8, 7. The world disappeared. While I was unconscious, while Dr. Reeves was carefully opening my skull and navigating around the delicate architecture of my brain, while nurses monitored every vital sign and the anesthesiologist kept me suspended in that space between life and death. Marcus was 4 floors down in the hospital cafeteria. He had his laptop open. He had the insurance company's website pulled up. And he had Stella sitting across from him, watching as he changed the beneficiary on my $1 million life insurance policy. From his mother, the person I'd designated years ago, back before we understood how serious things were between us, to Stella Marsh. A woman who had been in my life for 3 weeks. A woman whose nursing credentials didn't exist. A woman who, it would turn out, had done this before. But I didn't know any of that as I drifted in the dark, my life quite literally in someone else's hands. I didn't know that Marcus had been having an affair for 6 months. I didn't know that he'd met Stella not at the hospital but at a hotel bar downtown. I didn't know that she'd been the one to suggest this entire scheme, having successfully pulled it off twice before with other desperate, greedy men. I didn't know that my surgery, with its significant risks, its real possibility of fatal complications, had seemed like the perfect opportunity. All I knew was darkness, and the distant sense that something was happening to me, something profound and irreversible. Whether that was the surgery or the betrayal, I couldn't have said. The surgery took 7 hours. 7 hours of delicate work as Dr. Reeves carefully clipped off the abnormal blood vessels, cauterized the malformation, and ensured no bleeding occurred. 7 hours during which my life hung by the thread of her skill and experience. 7 hours during which Marcus and Stella sat in the cafeteria, then moved to the parking garage, then drove to a nearby hotel. My sister Claire told me later that she'd tried to find Marcus during the surgery. She'd wanted company during the waiting, wanted someone else who loved me to sit with while the hours crawled past. But he'd been nowhere in the family waiting area. I figured he needed to walk around, she'd said, process his fear. I didn't think. No one had thought. Why would they? Marcus was my devoted husband, sick with worry about his wife's brain surgery. No one imagined he was in a hotel room with another woman, celebrating a successful beneficiary change. When I began to wake up, it was gradual. First, just awareness of sound, beeping monitors, hushed voices, the pneumatic whoosh of a door. Then sensation, pain, pressure, the strange feeling of bandages wrapped around my head. Then finally, light filtering through my eyelids, too bright, making me want to retreat back into the darkness. Natalie? Can you hear me? Dr. Reeves's voice, calm and professional. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand, I squeezed. Or tried to. My body felt disconnected, like a puppet with tangled strings. Good. That's very good. The surgery went well. You're in recovery. Don't try to talk yet. You have a breathing tube. We'll remove it soon. I wanted to ask if Marcus was there. I wanted to know if I was okay, if everything had worked, if I was going to be the same person I was before. But the tube prevented speech, and exhaustion pulled me back down into sleep. The next time I woke, the breathing tube was gone. My throat was raw, my head felt like it was caught in a vice, and every tiny movement sent shockwaves of pain through my skull. But I could think. I could remember. I was still me. Marcus? I croaked, my voice barely audible. He's not here right now, sweetie. A nurse's voice. Gentle, not Stella. I'd learn later that Stella had made herself scarce after the surgery, as per their plan. Too risky to be around when I woke up. He stepped out to get some coffee. Your sister's here, though. Claire? My sister's face appeared above me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Hey, Nat, welcome back. You scared us. Surgery, okay? Perfect. Dr. Reeves said it couldn't have gone better. You're going to be fine. She was smiling, but something was off in her expression. Worry that went beyond post-surgical concern. What's wrong? I managed. Nothing. Nothing's wrong. You just focus on healing. But I knew my sister. I'd known her for 33 years, and I could read every micro-expression on her face. Something was wrong. Claire. She glanced at the nurse, who was checking my vitals and studiously ignoring our conversation. We'll talk later. When you're stronger. I wanted to press, but exhaustion swamped me again. The post-anesthesia fog was thick and pain medication was pulling me back under. I let myself drift, trusting that whatever was bothering Claire could wait until I was more coherent. Marcus appeared sometime later. I'd lost all track of time in the windowless ICU. His face was flushed, his shirt slightly rumpled, and he smelled like hotel soap. But I was too out of it to register these details. I just felt relief at seeing him. "Hey, baby," he said, taking my hand carefully, avoiding the IV. "You made it. How do you feel?" "Like my head's exploding," I whispered. Dr. Reeves said that's normal. She said everything went perfectly. Better than expected. There was something in his voice. Disappointment? Surely not. I was imagining things. My drugged brain creating problems where none existed. "You weren't in the waiting room," I murmured. "Claire looked for you." A pause, just a fraction too long. I needed some air. The waiting was killing me. I was walking around trying not to lose my mind. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like something a worried husband would do. But there was that pause, that tiny hesitation that my subconscious filed away, even as my conscious mind accepted his explanation. "Stella didn't come?" I asked, suddenly wondering why the woman who'd been so present during all the prep had vanished for the actual surgery. Marcus's hand tensed in mine. "No, she wasn't working today. Her shift rotation changed." Another lie. Another tiny crack in the facade. But I was too weak to examine it, too exhausted to question. I just nodded and let my eyes close again. Over the next few days, I existed in a haze of pain medication and healing. The ICU gave way to a regular room. The constant monitoring eased to periodic check-ins. Dr. Reeves pronounced herself pleased with my progress. The headaches that had plagued me for months were gone, replaced by surgical pain that would fade with time. Marcus visited every day, but something had shifted. He was attentive but distracted, present but distant. He'd check his phone constantly, typing messages he'd angle away from me. When I asked who he was texting, he'd say work, or your mom, or just coordinating stuff. Claire noticed too. I saw it in the way she watched him when he wasn't looking, her eyes narrowed and suspicious. "Has Marcus seemed weird to you?" she asked one afternoon when he'd stepped out to make some calls. "He's stressed," I said, defending him automatically. "This has been hard on him too." Claire's tone suggested she disagreed, but wasn't going to argue with someone who'd just had brain surgery. Stella never came to visit. I'd asked Marcus about it once, and he'd said she'd been transferred to a different unit. Budget cuts or something. But she asked about you. She's glad you're doing well. I'd felt a little hurt that she hadn't stopped by, but I'd let it go. Hospital staff were busy. She'd done her job during the prep. I had no claim on her time now. If only I'd known the truth. I was discharged after 5 days, sent home with a pharmacy's worth of medications, strict activity restrictions, and a follow-up schedule that would keep me tethered to the hospital for months. Marcus helped me into the house, up the stairs I wasn't supposed to be climbing yet, and into our bed. "I'll be working from home for the next few weeks," he said, adjusting the pillows behind me. "I want to make sure you have everything you need." "You don't have to do that. Claire can come stay with me." "I want to." He kissed my bandaged forehead gently. "You're my wife. This is where I should be." I'd felt a rush of love for him then, gratitude that I'd married someone who'd stand by me through something this terrifying. I'd reached for his hand, squeezing weakly. "I love you." "Love you too," he'd murmured. But his eyes were already darting to his phone, buzzing with another message. The first week at home was a blur of pain, exhaustion, and slow healing. Marcus was indeed working from home, set up in the guest room with his laptop and multiple monitors. He'd bring me meals, help me to the bathroom, change my bandages with surprising gentleness. But he was also gone a lot. Running to the pharmacy, picking up your prescriptions, getting groceries. Errands that seemed to take hours longer than they should. Claire came by every day, bringing books I was too tired to read and gossip I was too drugged to follow. But she also watched Marcus with increasing suspicion, a look I couldn't quite interpret through my post-surgical fog. It was during the second week, When I was starting to feel slightly more human, that I found the first piece of evidence. I'd woken up thirsty in the middle of the night, my usual water glass empty. Marcus was asleep beside me, snoring softly. His phone was on the nightstand, screen dark. I'd reached for it without thinking, planning to use the flashlight function to navigate to the bathroom without turning on the blinding overhead light. The phone lit up at my touch, and I saw the preview of a text message before the lock screen engaged. Stella, miss you? When can I see you again? This waiting is killing me. I stared at the words, my brain struggling to process them through the haze of pain medication and post-surgical confusion. Stella, our nurse. Missing my husband. Wanting to see him. There had to be an explanation. A reasonable, innocent explanation, but my hands were shaking as I set the phone down. My heart was racing, sending painful pulses through my healing skull. And somewhere deep in my gut, below the medications and the exhaustion, a terrible suspicion was taking root. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I just lay there in the dark, listening to Marcus breathe, and wondering who the man beside me really was. The next morning, I said nothing. I watched him get up, stretch, check his phone with a small smile he quickly suppressed when he saw I was awake. I watched him make breakfast, asking cheerfully how I'd slept, if my pain was manageable, if I needed anything. I watched, and I said nothing. But I was awake now, not just from sleep, but from the comfortable delusion I'd been living in. And once you start looking for cracks, you see them everywhere. The way he tilted his phone away from me when typing, the new cologne I didn't recognize, the charge on our credit card statement for a hotel downtown, the day of my surgery, the way he'd startled when Claire asked casually about Stella, asking if that nice nurse had checked in on my recovery. She's busy, Marcus had said quickly. I'm sure she's thinking of you, though. Claire had looked at me meaningfully, but I'd pretended not to notice. I needed to be sure. I needed evidence. Because if I was wrong, if my suspicious mind was creating problems that didn't exist, I'd damage my marriage irreparably. But if I was right, then while I'd been unconscious on an operating table, my brain exposed to the world, my life hanging in the balance, my husband had been betraying me in ways I was only beginning to understand. 3 weeks post-surgery, I was finally allowed to use my laptop for short periods. The screen time still gave me headaches, but Dr. Reeves had cleared me for light cognitive activity. I told Marcus I wanted to catch up on emails, maybe do some online shopping. What I really wanted was to investigate. I started with Stella Marsh. A simple Google search while Marcus was in the shower, my ears straining for the sound of the water turning off. There were several Stella Marshes on social media. I scrolled through profiles, looking for auburn hair, green eyes, the face I'd trusted with my medical care. I found her on the 4th try. Her Instagram was mostly private, but her profile picture showed her clearly. Definitely the same woman. Her bio read, "Living my best life, good vibes only." No mention of being a nurse, no scrubs in her public photos. Just shots at bars, restaurants, beaches, always smiling. Often with men who seemed too old for her, too wealthy, too married. I clicked through to her tagged photos and felt my blood run cold. There was Marcus, at a restaurant I didn't recognize. His arm around Stella's waist, both of them laughing at something off camera. The date stamp was from 4 months ago, a month before my headaches had started, 2 months before my diagnosis. The shower shut off. I quickly closed the browser and set the laptop aside, my hands trembling so badly I nearly knocked over my water glass. Marcus emerged in a cloud of steam, towel around his waist. "You okay? You look pale." "Just a headache," I lied, pressing my hand to my forehead. "The screen time is still hard." "Then rest. Stop pushing yourself." He was all concern, all care. The perfect attentive husband, the perfect actor. I waited until he went to the guest room for his next work call. Then I opened the laptop again, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my skull. I searched for more. I created a fake Instagram account and requested to follow Stella. While I waited for approval, which might never come, I searched elsewhere: hospital staff directories, nursing license databases, professional registry sites. Stella Marsh didn't exist in any of them. She wasn't a nurse at the hospital where I'd had surgery. She wasn't a nurse anywhere in the state. Her nursing license didn't exist because she'd never been a nurse at all. My breath was coming in short, painful gasps. The room was spinning. Who was she? Why had she been at all my appointments? How had she known so much about my medical case? And most importantly, what was her relationship with my husband? I heard Marcus's footsteps on the stairs. I closed the laptop again and forced myself to breathe normally, to school my features into neutrality. "Hey," he said, poking his head in. "I need to run out for a bit. Will you be okay for an hour or so?" "Where are you going?" A pause. "The office. Just need to grab some files I forgot. Won't be long." Another lie. I could hear it now, could see the tells I'd been missing for months. The way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes, the slight tension in his jaw, the too casual tone. "Okay," I said softly. "I'll be fine." I watched from the bedroom window as he backed out of the driveway. Then I waited 5 more minutes to be sure he wasn't coming back. Then I did what I should have done weeks ago. I called Claire. "I need you to come over," I said when she answered. "Right now. And I need you to bring your laptop." "What's wrong? Is it your head? Should I call Dr. Reeves?" "My head is fine." I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "But I think my husband is trying to kill me." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Claire said finally. "Don't do anything until I get there." I sat on the bed, my post-surgical brain working overtime, connecting dots I'd been too trusting to see before. The life insurance questions Marcus had insisted on reviewing before my surgery. The way he'd been so insistent on coming to every medical appointment, the woman posing as a nurse, creating trust and access. The hotel charge on the day of my surgery, when he should have been in the waiting room, sick with worry. The constant texting. The distance. The lies. And now, the most terrifying possibility of all. What if my surgery, with its very real risks, had been exactly what they were counting on? What if they'd been planning for me not to wake up? I heard Claire's car in the driveway and made my way slowly downstairs, still careful with the steps my doctor had warned me about. My sister burst through the door, laptop bag in hand, her face pale with worry. "Tell me everything," she said. "Don't leave anything out." So I did. I told her about Stella, about the text message, about the Instagram photo, about the missing nursing credentials. I told her about Marcus's lies, his absences, the hotel charge. Claire's expression grew darker with every detail. "We need to document all of this," she said, opening her laptop. "Screenshots, records, everything. And then we need to figure out exactly what they were planning." "Were?" I caught the past tense. "You think it's over?" Claire looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and rage. "Nat, you survived the surgery. You're recovering. Whatever they were hoping would happen in that operating room didn't happen. So either they're going to back off and hope you never find out, or they're going to try something else," I finished, the words bitter in my mouth. "Or they're going to try something else," Claire confirmed grimly. "Which is why we need to move fast. We need to find out everything we can about this Stella woman, about what Marcus has been doing, and about what they were planning." She paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "And Natalie? We need to do all of this without them knowing you suspect a thing. Can you do that? Can you keep pretending everything is normal while we investigate?" I thought about Marcus, about the man I'd loved and trusted for 11 years, about the vows we'd made, the life we'd built, the future I'd imagined. Then I thought, About him sitting in a hospital cafeteria, changing my life insurance beneficiary while I lay unconscious on an operating table. Yes, I said, my voice hard. I can do that. Claire nodded. Then let's find out exactly who your husband really is, and who this Stella Marsh really is, and what they were planning to do to you. She pulled up a search window. Let's start with the hotel charge. Do you remember the date? I did. It was burned into my memory now, the day of my surgery. As Claire began pulling up credit card statements and hotel records, as we started the process of unraveling my husband's betrayal thread by thread, I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. I'd survived brain surgery. I'd survived having my skull opened and my brain exposed and blood vessels clipped away from gray matter that made me who I was. I would survive this too. And more than that, I would make sure that Marcus and his fake nurse paid for every lie, every betrayal, every moment they'd spent hoping I wouldn't wake up. The game had changed. They just didn't know it yet. Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard while I sat beside her on the couch, my post-surgical brain struggling to keep up with the flood of information she was uncovering. The hotel charge was for $247, she said, pulling up our credit card statement. The Meridian downtown, room service, minibar, the works. She looked at me, her jaw tight. Want me to call them? And say what? That my husband might have been there during my surgery? Exactly that. Claire was already dialing, putting the phone on speaker. Hi, yes. I'm calling about a charge on my credit card from 3 weeks ago. My husband stayed there, and I'm trying to reconcile our records. Marcus Harrison? Yes, that's right. The afternoon of October 1st. There was typing on the other end. Then, yes, I see that reservation. Checked in at 2:15 p.m., checked out at 6:30 p.m. Is there a problem with the charge? 2:15. My surgery had started at 9 a.m. It was supposed to take 6 to 8 hours. He'd checked into a hotel room in the middle of my brain surgery. No problem, Claire said, her voice steady despite the fury in her eyes. Just confirming. Thank you. She ended the call and looked at me. Nat, I know. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Keep going. What else? Over the next hour, Claire built a timeline that made me physically ill. Marcus's credit card showed charges at an upscale restaurant the night before my surgery, a restaurant we'd never been to together. There was a charge at a jewelry store 2 weeks before my diagnosis, a weekend trip to wine country I'd known nothing about while I was supposedly visiting my parents alone. He's been spending money like crazy, Claire muttered, scrolling through months of statements. Designer stores, expensive dinners, hotels. How did you not notice? We have separate accounts for discretionary spending, I said weakly. We always have. It was supposed to prevent arguments about money. I laughed bitterly. Guess it prevented me from noticing he was funding an affair too. Claire pulled up Stella's Instagram again on her laptop. My fake account request had been accepted. Clearly, Stella wasn't particularly cautious about her followers. What we found made everything so much worse. Stella's feed was a carefully curated collection of luxury lifestyle posts. Designer bags, expensive restaurants, tropical vacations, and men. Always men, though their faces were usually artfully cropped out or turned away from the camera. But Claire, bless her investigative instincts, started looking at the backgrounds, the reflections, the details. Look at this one, she said, pointing to a photo of Stella holding a champagne glass, the golden liquid catching the light. Behind her, barely visible in the mirror, was Marcus's distinctive watch. The Tag Heuer I'd bought him for his 40th birthday. Another photo, this one at a beach. The caption read, "Paradise Found." In the corner of the frame, partially buried in sand, was a pair of men's sunglasses. The same Ray-Bans I'd seen on Marcus's dresser. She's been with him for months, I whispered. Maybe longer. There's more. Claire's voice was grim. She pulled up a website I didn't recognize, some kind of public records database. I did a deeper search on Stella Marsh. Want to guess what I found? Tell me. She's been arrested twice. Once for fraud, charges dropped. Once for identity theft, pleaded down to a misdemeanor. Claire turned the laptop toward me. And here's the interesting part. Both arrests were in different states. Both involved men who were married. And in both cases, there were suspicious insurance claims filed right around the time she was in their lives. My blood ran cold. What kind of insurance claims? One was a house fire. The man's wife barely escaped. She was in the hospital for weeks with smoke inhalation and burns. Claire clicked to another article. The other was a car accident. The wife was driving, lost control on a mountain road. She survived but was in a coma for 2 months. The room was spinning. I gripped the couch cushion, trying to steady myself. Neither wife died, I said slowly. Like me. I didn't die. No, they didn't. And in both cases, the husbands had recently changed their life insurance beneficiaries. In both cases, Stella disappeared shortly after the wives recovered. The investigations went nowhere because there was no proof of anything beyond affairs and insurance fraud that never paid out. I stared at my sister. The full horror of what Marcus and Stella had planned settling over me like a shroud. They were hoping I'd die on the operating table, I said, or have complications, a stroke, brain damage severe enough that I'd never recover. That's why Marcus changed the beneficiary during the surgery, because he thought I wouldn't make it through. Claire reached for my hand. Nat, we need to call the police. This is conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, God knows what else. With what evidence? I asked bitterly. An affair? Some old arrest that led nowhere? A hotel visit during my surgery? None of that proves they were trying to kill me. It just proves my husband is a cheating scumbag. The beneficiary change isn't illegal. Spouses change beneficiaries. It happens. I rubbed my temples, careful of the healing incision. We need more. We need them to incriminate themselves. We need proof of their plan, of their intent. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are you thinking? I'm thinking we need to make them believe they still have a chance. I looked at my sister, feeling something cold and calculated clicking into place in my mind. I'm thinking we need to catch them in the act of trying again. That's insane. And dangerous, so is brain surgery. I already survived that. I stood up slowly, my balance still not quite right. Marcus thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm still the trusting wife who believed every lie he told. We use that. How? I walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. Somewhere out there, Marcus was with Stella, probably celebrating that I was recovering well, probably planning their next move. We make them think I'm getting worse, I said slowly. Complications from the surgery. New symptoms. Something that means I might not recover after all. Claire's eyes widened. You want to fake a medical crisis. Not fake. Exaggerate. My mind was racing now, fitting pieces together. Dr. Reeves warned me about possible complications, seizures, cognitive decline, personality changes. What if I started showing symptoms? What if Marcus thought his original plan might still work out, just on a delayed timeline? They'll try something, Claire said, understanding dawning in her eyes. If they think you're compromised, if they think your cognitive function is declining, they might try to get you to change your own beneficiary. Or they might try something more direct. And when they do, we'll have proof. I turned back to her. Real, actionable proof that we can take to the police. This is incredibly risky, Nat. I know. I sat back down beside her. But what's the alternative? I confront Marcus with what we've found. He denies everything, lawyers up, and I'm left with a divorce and a cheating husband who tried to murder me walking free? No, I want them both to pay. Claire studied my face for a long moment. You're serious about this? Completely. Then we need help. We can't do this alone. She pulled out her phone. I have a friend from law school who went into criminal defense. She knows people. Investigators, tech experts. If we're going to do this right, we need professionals. Can we trust her? With my life? With yours? Claire was already texting. Her name is Diana Ortiz. She's handled cases like this before, domestic situations that needed evidence gathering before going to the police. She'll know exactly what we need. While Claire made arrangements with Diana, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room, thinking about the man I'd married. I'd met Marcus at a professional conference 11 years ago. He'd been charming, successful, attentive in ways that had made me feel seen and valued. Our courtship had been a whirlwind, our wedding perfect, our life together comfortable. When had it changed? When had I become nothing more than a life insurance payout to him? Or had I ever been anything more? Marcus returned home an hour later, breezing in with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and an apologetic smile. Sorry that took so long. Traffic was terrible. He kissed my forehead, the casual intimacy of it making my skin crawl. How are you feeling? Tired, I said, keeping my voice weak. My head hurts. Concern crossed his face. Too much concern. Eager concern. Did you take your medication? Yes, it's not helping as much as it used to. I watched his expression carefully. Was that hope flickering in his eyes? Maybe we should call Dr. Reeves, he said, but his tone was uncertain. Or maybe it's just part of the healing process. The pain is supposed to get better gradually, not all at once. Maybe. I let my hand tremble slightly as I reached for the water glass. I've been having trouble concentrating too. I tried to read earlier and couldn't follow the words. That's normal after brain surgery, baby. You need to give yourself time. But I could hear the excitement underneath his sympathy. Let's just get some food in you and see how you feel. Over dinner, I played my role perfectly. I fumbled with my fork. I lost my train of thought mid-sentence. I asked Marcus to repeat himself, claiming I was having trouble processing what he said. All lies. My recovery was actually going remarkably well. Dr. Reeves had been pleased with my progress at my last checkup. My cognitive function was intact, my coordination returning to normal. But Marcus didn't need to know that. I'm worried about you, he said. Watching me struggle with the pad thai I could have eaten perfectly well if I wanted to. Maybe we should move up your next appointment with Dr. Reeves. No, I said quickly. I don't want to seem like I'm overreacting. Let's wait for the scheduled appointment. Relief flashed across his face. If you're sure, but if you get worse, promise me you'll say something. I promise. After dinner, Marcus settled me on the couch with a blanket and turned on a movie I pretended to have trouble following. He sat beside me, his hand on my knee, his phone in his other hand. I watched from the corner of my eye as his thumbs moved rapidly across the screen, texting Stella, undoubtedly. Telling her about my symptoms. Making new plans. Claire texted me around 9 p.m. Diana can meet tomorrow. She's bringing equipment. Be ready. I deleted the message immediately and set my phone aside. Marcus glanced over. Who was that? Claire. Just checking in. She's been coming by a lot. There was something in his tone. Suspicion? Annoyance? She's my sister. I just had brain surgery. I know. He set his phone down. I'm here, you know. I can take care of you. You don't need Claire hovering all the time. She's not hovering. She's helping. I can help. I'm your husband. The word tasted like poison in the air between us. Husband. A title that used to mean partnership, love, loyalty. Now it meant liar, betrayer, would-be murderer. I'm tired, I said, pushing myself up from the couch with exaggerated difficulty. I'm going to bed. It's only 9:30. I know, but I'm exhausted. I let myself sway slightly. Will you help me upstairs? Concern and calculation warred in his expression. He helped me up the stairs, his hand hovering near my back as if ready to catch me if I fell. In our bedroom, he helped me change into my pajamas with a gentleness that would have touched me a week ago. Now it just made me want to vomit. I love you, he said, kissing my forehead after tucking me in. We're going to get through this. You're going to be fine. I love you too, I lied, the words ashes in my mouth. He left the room, and I heard his footsteps heading to the guest room where he'd been sleeping to avoid disturbing me, more likely to avoid me hearing his late-night phone calls with Stella. I waited until I heard his door close, then pulled out my phone and texted Claire. He's buying it. Bring Diana tomorrow at 10. Tell her to use the side door. The response came immediately. Be careful. If he suspects anything, he won't, I typed back. He thinks I'm cognitively impaired. He's too busy planning my demise to notice I'm planning his. I set my phone on silent and lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house settling around me. Somewhere in the guest room, Marcus was probably texting Stella, telling her that his wife was showing concerning symptoms, that maybe their plan would work out after all, that maybe they just needed to wait a little longer, or maybe they'd decide waiting was too risky. Maybe they'd try to speed things along. That's what I was counting on. Diana Ortiz arrived at precisely 10 a.m., dressed in casual clothes that made her look like a friend dropping by rather than a criminal defense attorney, with a bag full of surveillance equipment. Claire had let her in through the side door while Marcus was on a work call in the guest room. We gathered in my bedroom, speaking in hushed tones. Claire filled me in on the situation, Diana said, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. I have to tell you, this is one of the most disturbing cases I've encountered, and I've seen a lot. Can you help? I asked. I can get you the evidence you need. But Natalie, you need to understand the risks. If Marcus suspects you're onto him, if he feels cornered, he might do something drastic. We're talking about a man who was willing to let his wife die on an operating table. He's capable of violence. I know. Do you? Diana leaned forward. Because once we start down this path, once we start actively gathering evidence, there's no going back. You'll need to maintain your performance every second he's around. One slip, one moment where you seem too alert, too aware, and we've lost our chance. Worse, we might have put you in immediate danger. I thought about the text message I'd seen on Marcus's phone. About Stella's Instagram posts with my husband's watch in the background. About the hotel room during my surgery and the beneficiary change, and the pattern of suspicious accidents following Stella wherever she went. I understand the risks, I said firmly. Tell me what we need to do. Diana opened her bag and began pulling out small devices. First, we wire the house. Audio and video in every room except the bathrooms. We need to keep this legal. The feeds will go to a secure server that only we can access. Everything will be time-stamped and encrypted. What about his phone? Claire asked. If they're planning something, they're coordinating through texts. Can't legally access his phone without his permission or a warrant. But Diana pulled out a small device that looked like a phone charger. We can monitor if we're clever about it. This is a charging cable with a built-in logger. It copies data when the phone is plugged in. Not admissible in court on its own, but it can tell us what we need to look for through legal channels. Won't he notice? Not if we swap it with his existing charger. Most people don't look closely at their cables. Diana glanced at me. Where does he usually charge his phone? Guest room nightstand. And sometimes on the kitchen counter. Perfect. We'll swap both. Diana continued pulling equipment from her bag. Now for you. We need you wearing a wire whenever he's around. Something small, something he won't notice even if he touches you. She held up what looked like a simple pendant necklace. Medical alert jewelry? People wear them all the time post-surgery. The pendant contains a microphone and transmitter. Range of about 50 feet, battery life of 48 hours. You'll need to swap it out every other day. I took the necklace, feeling the weight of it in my palm. Such a small thing. But potentially the key to everything. What's the endgame here? Diana asked. Because we need to be clear about what we're trying to prove. Adultery? Insurance fraud? Attempted murder? All of it, I said. I want them both prosecuted for everything. I want them in prison. Diana nodded slowly. Then we need them to incriminate themselves. We need recorded conversations where they discuss their plan, their intent, their previous attempts. We need them to make another move, something we can interrupt and use as proof of attempted harm. How do we make that happen? You keep playing the impaired wife. You get worse, not better. You start talking about updating your own will, your own insurance. You make yourself seem vulnerable and suggestible. Diana's expression was grim, and we wait for them to take the bait. Over the next 2 hours, Diana and Claire systematically wired my house. Tiny cameras disguised as smoke detectors, audio devices hidden in picture frames and decorative objects. The charging cable swap completed while Marcus remained absorbed in his work call. By the time they finished, my home had become a surveillance net designed to catch a predator. "Test the necklace," Diana instructed, handing me her phone with a monitoring app open. I put on the pendant and spoke softly. "Testing 1, 2, 3." My voice came through the phone crystal clear. "Perfect." Diana showed me how to activate and deactivate the device with a specific sequence of taps. Only turn it on when you need it. We don't want to waste battery, and we don't need hours of you sleeping or watching TV. "How long do you think this will take?" I asked. Diana and Claire exchanged glances. "Could be days." "Could be weeks," Diana said. "Depends on how quickly Marcus and Stella move, how desperate they get, how much pressure we can apply without being obvious about it." She paused. "The question is, how long can you keep up the act?" I thought about Marcus sitting in a hotel room during my surgery, changing my beneficiary to a woman who'd played dress-up as a nurse. I thought about Stella's Instagram feed, her arrest records, the trail of suspicious accidents following her. "As long as it takes," I said. After Diana and Claire left through the side door, I spent an hour just sitting in my bedroom, feeling the weight of the pendant around my neck and the cameras watching from the corners of the room. My home had become a stage, my life a performance designed to trap the man I'd once loved. Marcus emerged from his work call around 1 p.m., apologizing for being tied up all morning. "How are you feeling?" he asked, and I heard the underlying eagerness in the question. "Not great," I said, touching my temple. "Dizzy, and I keep forgetting things. I couldn't remember your mother's name earlier." Alarm flickered across his face. "That's concerning. Maybe we should—" "I don't want to overreact," I interrupted. "Dr. Reeves said some cognitive issues were normal in the recovery period. Did she say forgetting family members' names was normal?" "I think so. I don't really remember the conversation clearly." I let confusion cloud my expression. "I'm sure she did." I could practically see the wheels turning in Marcus's head, calculating, planning. "Well, let's keep an eye on it," he said finally. "And if it gets worse, I'll let you know," I promised. After he returned to his work, I activated the pendant with the sequence of taps Diana had shown me. Then I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document, making sure the screen was visible if Marcus walked by. I titled it, "Last Will and Testament, Draft." Then I waited to see how long it would take for him to notice. It took less than 2 hours. Marcus appeared in the bedroom doorway, his gaze immediately going to my laptop screen. "What are you working on?" he asked casually, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Oh." I minimized the window with clumsy keystrokes. "Just some paperwork. Boring stuff." "Nat, was that a will? Are you updating your will?" I let my eyes widen, as if I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. With the surgery and everything, I realized we haven't updated them in years. I thought I should get it done while I'm thinking about it. "But you're recovering. You're going to be fine." "There's no need," I know. But it made me realize how unprepared we were. What if something had gone wrong? What if the surgery had failed? I touched the pendant around my neck, my fingers trembling slightly. "I just want to make sure everything is in order." "Is that wrong?" Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, reaching for my hand. "No, it's not wrong. It's just, you don't need to think about this right now. Focus on getting better." "But if I'm having cognitive problems, shouldn't I handle this while I still can? While I can still make clear decisions?" I looked at him with wide, trusting eyes. "You'd help me, wouldn't you? Make sure I do it right?" I watched his expression shift, saw the moment the opportunity registered. "Of course I'd help you," he said softly. "Whatever you need." "Thank you." I squeezed his hand, feeling sick at the warmth of his skin against mine. I knew I could count on you. That night, after Marcus had kissed me goodnight and retreated to the guest room, I lay in the dark and touched the pendant around my neck. Somewhere, Diana was listening to the recording of our conversation, analyzing Marcus's responses, building a case, and somewhere, Marcus was probably texting Stella, telling her that his cognitively impaired wife wanted to update her will, telling her that maybe, just maybe. They wouldn't need to wait much longer after all. The trap was set. Now we just needed them to walk into it. The next 72 hours moved with excruciating slowness. I played my role perfectly, forgetting conversations, struggling with simple tasks, mentioning my will repeatedly. Marcus grew increasingly attentive, increasingly eager to help me with my estate planning. Diana confirmed what we suspected. Marcus's text messages to Stella were a roadmap of conspiracy. She's declining faster than expected. Thinks she should update beneficiaries while she still can. This might actually work out. On the fourth night, everything came together. I was in bed, supposedly sleeping, when I heard Marcus's voice drift from the guest room. The audio feed caught every word. "Tomorrow," he was saying. "She's agreed to let me help her update everything. I'll make sure she signs the papers. Once I'm the beneficiary on her policy too, we just need one more incident." Stella's voice came through his speakerphone. "What kind of incident?" "A fall down the stairs. A medication error. Post-surgical complications happen all the time." His voice was cold, calculating. "We've waited long enough. The surgery was supposed to take care of this. And if she suspects something?" "She doesn't. She can barely remember what day it is." Marcus laughed, and the sound made my blood run cold. Her own sister asked if I was sure about her cognitive state. Even her family thinks she's impaired. I'd set that up with Claire, of course. A staged conversation Marcus had accidentally overheard. But hearing him weaponize it was still shocking. "What about the previous attempts?" Stella asked. "The others who survived, are you sure no one's connected the dots?" "Those were different states, different situations. And you were smart enough to disappear before anyone could prove anything." Marcus's voice grew warmer, intimate. "After this, we'll have enough money to disappear together. Somewhere tropical. Somewhere we can finally be free." Diana, listening remotely, immediately contacted the detective she'd been coordinating with. "We have conspiracy to commit murder. Multiple admissions. I'm sending you the audio file now." The next morning, I played out the final scene. Marcus arrived with coffee and freshly printed documents. Life insurance beneficiary change forms with his name typed neatly in the designation line. "I talked to our insurance agent," he said, his tone solicitous. "He helped me get these forms ready. You just need to sign here and initial here." I stared at the papers, then at him. "This makes you the beneficiary of my policy?" "Yes, just like I made you the beneficiary of mine." The lie came smoothly. He'd changed his to Stella months ago. "It's what married couples do, baby. We take care of each other." I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. Not from fear, from rage barely contained. The pendant around my neck was recording. The cameras were watching, and outside 2 police cars were waiting for Diana's signal. "Marcus," I said softly, setting down the pen, "I need you to tell me something. Anything. Do you love me?" He didn't even hesitate. "Of course I do. More than anything." "Then why did you change your own beneficiary to Stella Marsh during my surgery?" The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I didn't. The hotel room during my surgery. The affair that started 6 months ago. The beneficiary change you made while I was unconscious on an operating table." I stood up, my movements perfectly steady. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Marcus backed toward the door. "Natalie, you're confused. The surgery, it's affected your memory." "My memory is perfect." I pulled out my phone, pulling up the text message transcripts Diana had compiled. "Here's you telling Stella I was declining. Here's you planning a convenient accident. Here's you discussing how the surgery was supposed to kill me." His face went from white to gray. "You can't prove any of that. Those are private messages. Actually, with a warrant, we can prove all of it." Diana stepped through the bedroom doorway, 2 police detectives behind her. "Marcus Harrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." Marcus's arrest was almost anticlimactic. He didn't fight, didn't run. He just stood there as they read him his rights and cuffed his hands behind his back. His eyes locked on mine with a mixture of disbelief and hatred. "You set me up," he said as they led him toward the door. No, I corrected. I caught you. There's a difference. Stella Marsh was arrested an hour later at the apartment Marcus had been paying for. Her real name was Stephanie Fulton, and she had outstanding warrants in 3 states for fraud and conspiracy. The evidence we'd gathered reopened investigations into the previous accidents involving her former target's wives. The trial took 8 months. Diana had been right. The recorded conversations, the paper trail, the pattern of behavior across multiple states, all of it combined to create an airtight case. Marcus tried to claim I'd manipulated him, that my brain surgery had somehow turned me vindictive and calculating. His lawyers tried to suppress the recordings, claiming I'd violated his privacy. But Diana had made sure everything we did was legal. Every recording was made in spaces where Marcus had no expectation of privacy. Every piece of evidence was properly obtained and documented. And the jury heard every word of him planning my death. Marcus Harrison was convicted on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, attempted fraud. 25 years minimum. Stephanie, took a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Marcus and providing information about her previous schemes. 15 years. She'd be 62 when she got out. The other wives, the ones who'd survived Stella's previous attempts, came forward during the trial. Their stories were eerily similar to mine: attentive boyfriends or husbands, mysterious medical crises or accidents, beneficiary changes, and then Stella's sudden disappearance when they survived. We formed an unlikely support group, 5 women who'd nearly been murdered for insurance money, all sitting together in the courtroom as justice was finally served. 1 year after my surgery, I stood in the empty house I'd once shared with Marcus. The divorce had been swift once he was convicted. The house was mine. The assets were mine. The life I'd built was mine. Claire helped me pack the last of Marcus's belongings. Suits he'd never wear again. Watches he'd never check. The wedding ring he'd stopped wearing the day they arrested him. "How are you feeling?" she asked, taping up another box. I touched the scar hidden beneath my hair, the permanent reminder of the surgery that had saved my life in more ways than one. "Like I survived," I said. "Twice." Dr. Reeves had cleared me to return to work. The headaches were gone, the AVM successfully treated. Physically, I'd made a complete recovery. Emotionally, I was still healing. But I was healing. I'd survived brain surgery. I'd survived my husband's betrayal. I'd survived a murder plot and come out the other side stronger, smarter, and absolutely certain of one thing. I would never let anyone underestimate me again. The house sold 3 months later. I moved across the country, started fresh in a city where no one knew my story, where I could be just Natalie, not that woman whose husband tried to kill her. Sometimes I still wake up from nightmares about being in that operating room, vulnerable and unconscious, while Marcus betrayed me floors below. But then I remember I woke up. I figured it out. I fought back, and I won. The pendant Diana gave me sits in a drawer now, a reminder that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most dangerous truths. The scar on my head is hidden by hair, but I know it's there, proof that I literally had my brain exposed to the world and survived. Marcus and Stella thought I was weak, impaired, easy prey. They learned too late that surviving brain surgery doesn't make you fragile. It makes you absolutely fearless. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out! And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.